I, Ava Mitchell, and this is the story of how I realized that sometimes family can be your worst enemy, especially in business. For 10 years, I poured my heart and soul into our small family tech company, transforming it from a struggling startup into a business with a turnover of $50 million. But success has a way of bringing out the ugliest sides of people, even those who are supposed to be on your side. I remember how it all started when our family business was just a small computer repair shop in a shopping mall, barely scraping by. My father founded it 20 years ago, and despite the hardships, it was his pride and joy. My sister Lauren was always the golden child, the straight-A student, the elite business school graduate, Dad's favorite. And I was the quiet one, the one who stayed in the shadows, helping him on the side while getting my degree in computer science at a local college. "Ava, you're wasting your potential," Lauren would say when she came home from school. "You should be aiming for more." But I saw something in that little workshop that no one else did: potential. While Lauren studied theoretical business models, I learned how the real world worked. I did programming, repaired systems, found gaps in the market that no one noticed. In my senior year of college, I developed our first proprietary software, a simple but effective inventory management tool for small businesses. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was affordable, easy to use, and met a real need. At first, my father was skeptical, but when local businesses started buying licenses, his tone changed. "Maybe you've got something, kid," he said. And for the first time, I saw a spark of pride in his eyes. That moment meant everything to me. If only I had known how temporary it would be. Under my leadership, the business began to grow. I worked 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, putting everything I had into our success. While Lauren climbed the corporate ladder at a prestigious consulting firm in New York, I was building something real. Our little workshop became a full-fledged software development company, expanding from local clients to national corporations. Mom watched me with quiet concern. "Don't work yourself to death, Ava," she would say, bringing me dinner in the office. "You need a life outside of this." But I couldn't stop. Maybe part of me was still seeking validation, or maybe I just wanted to prove I could create something of my own. 5 years after our transformation, we hit our first million in annual revenue. That was when Lauren suddenly became interested in the family business again. She quit her prestigious job and came back home. At a family dinner, she made a grand announcement. "I think it's time to take my rightful place in the company," she said, her trademark confidence sparkling. "With my business experience, we can really take things to the next level." Dad practically beamed. "That's wonderful, dear. Your professional approach will be an asset." I sat there, my fork frozen in midair, trying to process what was happening. The company I had built from scratch was now being handed over to Lauren, like some inheritance. I swallowed my objections and pretended everything was fine. Lauren was appointed co-CEO despite her lack of experience in our industry. Dad insisted it was good for the company's image to have someone with her reputation at the helm, so while I continued handling product development and operations, she took on marketing and investor relations. Over the next 5 years, our business thrived. But with that growth came increasing tension. I continued developing new software, building relationships, and improving our services. Meanwhile, Lauren was crafting her image as the face of the company. She gave interviews about what it was like being a woman in tech, accepted entrepreneurship awards, and took credit for innovations she had no part in. Our revenue soared to $50 million, but with it grew the battle for power. Lauren started excluding me from key meetings, making decisions without my consent, slowly and methodically pushing me out of my own creation. Then came the day of my father's 60th birthday, a night that changed everything. Of course, the party was Lauren's idea. She rented a large hall at the city's most expensive hotel and invited all our business partners. It wasn't so much a birthday party as a networking event disguised as a celebration. But that was Lauren's style. Everything had to serve a purpose. I arrived early to help with preparations in a simple black dress. As soon as Lauren noticed me, she gave me that disapproving look I had gotten used to over the years. "Couldn't you have put in a bit more effort?" she whispered. "These are important people, Ava." I ignored her and focused on greeting the guests. The room quickly filled with business executives, investors, and family friends. Lauren worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and flashing her perfectly rehearsed smile. I, as usual, stayed in the shadows, making sure everything went smoothly. Dinner was served, and just as I began to relax, Lauren clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. I expected the usual speech, maybe a tribute to Dad, some nostalgic childhood memories. Instead, she dropped a bombshell that destroyed everything. "While we're celebrating Dad's 60th, she began. Her voice was confident and authoritative. "I think it's time to announce some changes at Mitchell Tech." My stomach tightened. Changes? The board had agreed that the company needed unified leadership to move forward, she continued. Her words cut through the air like a blade. The board? What meetings? We had been held back for too long by outdated thinking and resistance to change. Lauren went on, her eyes meeting mine. "That's why, starting today, I'm taking on the role of sole CEO. It's time for some elements that no longer serve our growth to step aside." A whisper ran through the room. I sat frozen while Lauren conducted her corporate execution in front of our entire network. "Some people," she added. Her voice was laced with false sympathy, "are better suited for technical roles than leadership." She was talking about me, humiliating me. "My sister Ava did well keeping our outdated systems running, but in today's fast-paced industry, we need vision. We need excellence. And frankly, Ava, you're just not cut out for this level of business." I turned to my father. "Say something. Defend me." But he just nodded, a proud smile on his face. Mom, on the other hand, lowered her eyes, her hands trembling slightly on the table. Lauren wasn't finished. "The truth is," she said. Her voice rose for dramatic effect. "Ava, you're useless in today's business world. Your outdated ideas and lack of formal business education have become a burden. It's time for you to leave with dignity." The silence in the room was suffocating. Hundreds of eyes were on me, waiting for my response. I felt pity, judgment, unspoken agreement with Lauren's words. Everything I had built, every late night, every sacrifice, was being taken away from me in front of everyone. Slowly, I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound cutting through the silence like a shot. Everyone expected a scene, maybe tears, shouting. Instead, I simply grabbed my purse, walked over to my father's table, and placed a small wrapped gift in front of him. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said softly. Then I turned and walked out, holding my head high, leaving behind whispers, mockery, and a sister who thought she had won. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by awards and patents bearing my name. Lauren thought she had taken everything from me, but she forgot one important detail, something that would turn her moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of her life. When I turned on my laptop and began typing, a light smile played on my lips. Tomorrow will be interesting. After all, there's more than one way to run a successful business. And over 10 years, I've learned far more than Lauren ever did from all her fancy business courses. The next morning, the sun rose bright and clear, and with it, everything was about to change. I arrived at the office early, before anyone else, and waited. Exactly at 9 o'clock a.m., Lauren entered through the front doors with her father, both with triumphant smiles that were about to vanish. "Well," Lauren's voice was a mix of surprise and irritation. "What are you doing here? I thought after last night, you'd have enough dignity to stay at home." I smiled, remembering the email I sent at 3 a.m. to every major client, partner, and employee of Mitchell Tech. "Just finishing some things, sis. But since you're here, we should probably talk about the future of the company." "Nothing to talk about," her father interjected. His voice was firm. Lauren is now the boss. The board of directors has already approved it. Ah, yes, the board of directors, I said, pulling out my tablet. Let's talk about it. I tapped the screen, and the main monitor in the conference room lit up with a document. You see, while Lauren was busy planning parties, summer homes, and interviews, I was actually building this company, and there are a few things you seem to have forgotten. I opened another document, enlarging it for emphasis. First, let me remind you that I own 51% of Mitchell Tech. When we registered the company 10 years ago, Dad gave Lauren and me 25% each, leaving himself with 50%. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for expansion, Dad sold me 6% of his shares. Remember that day, Dad? You were too busy attending Lauren's awards ceremony to handle the negotiations yourself, so you signed the papers without reading them carefully. Both of their faces turned pale. Lauren's perfectly manicured hands gripped the conference table. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Dad would never—" "But he did," I interrupted, pulling out another document. And that's not all. I clicked again, and the screen filled with legal documents. The main software that generates 80% of our income doesn't belong to Mitchell Tech. It belongs to my separate company, Innovate Solutions, LLC. Mitchell Tech only has a licensing agreement, which expires in— I glanced at the clock. About 10 minutes. Her father collapsed into a chair, his mind racing. "The renewal documents," he mumbled. "The ones you asked me to sign last week. The ones I didn't read because you were too busy helping Lauren plan the party. Yes, those documents. I decided not to submit them." I finished for him. Lauren's face twisted with fury. "You conniving little—" "Careful, sis," I smoothly interrupted her. "You might want to hear the rest before finishing that sentence." I clicked again, and a stream of emails appeared on the screen. "While you were busy announcing my well-deserved resignation last night, I sent emails to our clients. You see, most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts. They signed with Mitchell Tech because of me, my experience, my accomplishments. Last night I informed them about the leadership changes and my departure. I enlarged the image, showing dozens of replies from our top clients. Do you want to know how many of them have already activated their contract termination clauses?" I tilted my head. "Or how many of our much better developers, who, by the way, actually work for Innovate Solutions, not Mitchell Tech, have already accepted job offers from my new project?" Silence. "Let me know if you need any further adjustments." Through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Lauren frantically pulled out her phone, her perfect composure cracking as she scrolled. "You can't do this," she stammered. "You mean, I can't take what's mine?" I said calmly. "You thought you could just take everything because you have an MBA and Dad's approval? You thought you could humiliate me in front of everyone and get away with it?" I stood up, adjusting my dress. "Here are your options." I let my words sink in before continuing. "Option 1. I walk away with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Mitchell Tech becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to all those important people you invited last night why the company's value dropped to 0 overnight." Dad's face had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. "And option 2? He asked weakly. "Option 2. You both resign." I took a deep breath and met their stunned gazes with a calm, unwavering look. "I take full control of Mitchell Tech," I continued. "You both keep your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends but with no say in operations. Lauren gets a nice severance package and glowing recommendations for her next job. Somewhere far from here." Lauren's face turned an interesting shade of red. "You planned this all along, didn't you? You were just waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back." I laughed shortly, without a hint of humor. "No, Lauren. I spent 10 years trying to be a good daughter, a good sister. And all that time, you both took me for granted. I built this company from the ground up while you reaped the rewards of my work. I planned this. I glanced at my watch again. About 12 hours ago, after you called me useless in front of everyone we know. My phone buzzed. Another client contract termination notice. Time's running out. What's it going to be? The next hour was a blur of paperwork and lawyers. By noon, I sat alone in what was now my office, looking out over the city. The company I had built was finally truly mine, but the victory felt hollow. Family ties lay in ruins around me, trust shattered like dropped crystal. That evening, Mom came to me. Her eyes were red from crying. "Did it have to end like this?" she asked softly. I met her gaze, my voice gentle but firm. They left me no choice. They would have taken everything I built and tossed me aside without a second thought. She nodded slowly, understanding, but sad. What now? I turned my laptop toward her, showing the plans I had already sketched out. Expansions, new product lines, innovations I had held back. Now, I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. I build something even bigger. But this time, I do it without carrying people who think I'm useless. A year later, under my sole leadership, Mitchell Tech had tripled its value. Lauren found a job at a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled but hopefully wiser. Dad retired, finally realizing that his golden child almost destroyed his legacy. We see each other on holidays, maintaining a polite distance, masking the wounds that may never fully heal. Sometimes late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a slight sadness for what we've lost. But then I remember that night at the birthday party, the look of contempt on Lauren's face, how Dad nodded at her cruel words. And I remind myself, in business and in family, respect is earned, not given. They learned this lesson too late. My story spread through business circles, becoming a cautionary tale about underestimating the wrong person. At industry events, I often catch whispers. "That's Ava Mitchell, the one who—" They never finish the sentence. They don't need to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at the graduation ceremony of Lauren's business school. The theme, Hidden Strengths, the Power of Underestimated Leaders. I accepted the invitation with a slight smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite an interesting story to tell. The company continues to thrive under my leadership, but more importantly, I've found peace with my decisions. Sometimes the strongest message you can send is simply to prove people wrong. And sometimes, the best revenge is not destroying others, but rising to such a height that they can't help but see their own mistakes. As I sit here in my office looking out over the city, I remember something my mom once told me. Success is the best revenge. But wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved past revenge. These days I'm focused on building something meaningful, something that outlasts petty jealousies and family dramas. I still keep that wrapped birthday gift that I never gave to Dad, a photo album chronicling the company's journey from that small workshop to what it is today. Maybe someday, when the wounds have healed enough, I'll finally give it to him. For now, it sits on my shelf, a quiet reminder that our greatest strengths often come from what others underestimate in us.